Nana Asma'u Bint, if you know her, she was the daughter of Usman Danfodio. If you actually read about her, you would hear the stories that she's actually seen as one of the first feminists. When you think about feminism in Africa, she's projected as one of the model of feminism at the time. So she's a Muslim woman, and I wanted to just tell us a bit about feminism in Africa because it's not alien to us. It's been part of us, right? It's just that a lot of times we forget that we had people like her who understood the importance of women's scholarship, and beyond just being educated herself, she was quadrilingual. She also taught other women who also went about teaching people, right? Then we come further, we think of Funmilayo Ransome Kuti, who understood, she was among the first 6 women that was educated, but she understood the importance of education, and she began to teach other women. But she started to also organize, and when she was told she couldn't protest against the Alake at the time, who had imposed tax, she organized women. Yeah? Yes, she organized women, and they mobilized over thousands. In fact, they said, oh, it's not protest, we're calling it picnic, hangouts, whatever. And they marched to the Alake's palace, and this guy ran away, literally. He could not withstand the number of women that were there. And you think about Margaret Ekpo, who her husband was a doctor, and in the civil service, he was not pleased with the colonial leadership, but because he was in the civil service, he couldn't protest. He sent her to represent in one of the meetings. She goes to the meeting, listens to Nnamdi Azikiwe and the rest of others talk. She's inspired. She schools in Ireland, comes back, starts to educate other women. She starts this movement of About Women Union. And before we knew it, by 1955, she organized women, and the women outnumbered the men in votes. She finally won an election and got into the House of the State Assembly for Eastern Region at the time, representing in 1961. And she started pushing for issues around social, economic, political freedom, rights for women. Hajara Sawaba Gambo, Hajia, from the north. Women in the north could not vote until 1979, but there was a story behind that. Hajara was mentored by Funmilayo, and she understood she needed to speak for the rights of women in the north to vote. And when Ahmadu Bello told them that women would vote in God's time, Hajara knew that we can't wait for God's time. And she was part of the NEPU, who at the time was the major opposition to the NPC, which was the dominant party. Hajara is known, or Hajia Gambo Sawaba is known as the most jailed woman. She was tortured beyond imagination. I don't want to go into that, but she did not give up. But within all of that, she understood the importance of women leadership, but she was known as a philanthropist who was speaking for the less privileged, pushing for social equality beyond class. And for her, it was not just about women. It was about the less privileged. It was about the marginalized in the society. So when women finally got the right to vote in the North in 1979, we celebrate that. But there were people who paid that price for us to experience this right to vote. So when we talk around feminist leadership for me, and I think of these great women, these are just a few. I think around spirit of solidarity, right? But beyond that is the base of equality, freedom and representation. That for me is what feminist leadership is. So as we live in our daily lives and we think around feminist leadership, I think of leadership for me. First, feminist leadership is about self-awareness and identity, because these women understood who they were and the identity they needed to project. But leadership, like one of my professors would say, leadership is taking responsibility to enable others achieve purpose in conditions of uncertainty. And I remember the story, the conversation around rapper, you tie, right? It's not about you, and for us, that is what is lacking. Feminist leadership is what Nigeria needs, actually, because if our leaders understand that first, leadership is responsibility, that leadership is enabling others, which is the people in the system, to achieve a shared purpose under conditions of uncertainty, then we will be able to resolve the challenges that we have. Now, feminist leadership also, for me, is beyond just the responsibilities about learning. And why is that important? That both Nana Asma'u Bint, both Hajia Sawaba, think about Funmilayo or Margaret Ekpo, they understood the importance of community. And they led by learning, but also learned collaborative leadership. Now, 2023 election, sadly, women representation is low, barely 10%, right? However, feminist leadership for me transcends gender and sex. It's also about an idea and an attitude. And for me, for the next elections, while we identify the women we support, we need to start identifying the men who represent feminist leadership. Those men that are talking with us and not talking at us. Those men that are willing to engage on platforms like debates. So if people don't want to debate, we should vote them out. Because we need to start thinking around people, individuals who represent the idea of feminist leadership beyond just gender.